What is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act? Telephone Consumer Protection Act, or TCPA, is a federal statute. It interacts with the FCC and the FTC and interacts a bit with the CFPB, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The TCPA is an extremely strong statute, and its protections are growing almost on a daily basis. What it pertains to is, for purposes of today, telephone calls to cellular devices, and in certain circumstances, residential lines from what's called an ATDS, which is an automatic telephone dialing system. It can also deal with pre-recorded or what's called robocalls, which is you basically upload several hundred numbers to a machine, and this software or hardware enables the collector or the telemarketer to call numerous telephone numbers at once, thousands per day, and it is often harassive to consumers. And organizations and companies who use this type of software or hardware are charged with having certain policies and procedures in place to make sure that they don't violate the TCPA. TCPA essentially says you have to get consent, without going too much into specific, prior express written consent to call somebody using a pre-recorded voice, an ATDS, or a robocall. What does prior express consent mean? Consent in writing to be called using an auto dialer. Now, there are two separate people who use, for purposes of today anyway, who use auto dialers. Telemarketers on one side, and debt collectors, or people trying to collect some sort of money, on the other side. The standards set for each of those entities based on recent rulings, FCC rulings, and CFPB opinions are a little bit different. Telemarketers are typically held to a little bit higher standard because they're not seeking to collect something, whereas debt collectors have a little bit lower standard but still have to get some form of consent. Issues in the TCPA involve whether or not providing your cell phone number to a medical company or a debt collector constitutes consent to be called with an auto dialer or not. It's been held pretty consistently that providing your number to an organization does not give consent to be called for telemarketing purposes, but case law and opinions are a little bit murky when it comes to whether or not providing your number to an organization gives you consent to be called with an auto dialer for collection of debts. So that's prior express consent. It also now has to do with revoked consent, meaning you can say, I initially gave you consent to call me with an auto dialer, but now I'm tired of receiving those calls, and there's an issue of how you have to revoke consent. The 11th Circuit is pretty clear that you can revoke consent by picking up a phone and saying, I would like you to stop calling my cell phone. I revoke consent. It does not have to be in writing. The consumer has the power to say, stop calling my cell phone. If the collector or telemarketer continues to call after consent is revoked or did not obtain the requisite prior express consent, the TCPA has a private right of action that accounts for statutory damages. What are statutory damages? Statutory damages are a damage amount set by the federal government in this case, which account for what are inquantifiable or unquantifiable damages, meaning if somebody calls your cell phone, you might not be able to say, I lost or suffered this much money damages. The TCPA has a statutory damage amount of $500 per call, or it has a trebling effect for what's called willful or wanton offenses, meaning if somebody calls you 500 times a day, that's pretty willful wanton, and then it can account for a trebling effect of up to $1,500 per dialed call.